All right, today we're pulling back the curtain on something you use every single day but probably never think about: the session cookie. It's this invisible little piece of tech that makes the modern web actually usable. But, as we're about to find out, it's also holding a pretty big secret.
You know exactly what I'm talking about, right? You're online shopping, you toss a few things in your cart, you click away to look at something else, and when you come back, everything's still right there. It feels like magic, but it's not. It's actually a really clever fix for a huge problem that's baked into the very foundation of the internet.
So how in the world do websites remember who you are from one click to the next? Well, let's dive right in and uncover the secret to the internet's memory.
Okay, so to get why this is such a big deal, you first have to understand the core problem. By default, the internet has a terrible memory. I mean, terrible. The protocol that runs the web, HTTP, is what we call stateless. You can think of it as having total digital amnesia. Every time you click on a link, the website server looks at you as if it's never seen you before. It's a brand new introduction every single time.
So, how do websites deal with this constant forgetfulness? Well, they give your browser a tiny little text file called a session cookie. It's basically a temporary name tag. For the rest of your visit, every time your browser talks to the server, it just flashes that little name tag, and the server goes, "Oh, right, I remember you. Here's your shopping cart."
Now, it's important to know there are kind of two flavors of these name tags. We're focused on session cookies. They're the temporary ones. They just hang out in your computer's short-term memory, or RAM, and then, poof, they disappear the moment you close your browser. They're perfect for stuff like a shopping cart. The other kind, persistent cookies, are a little different. They get saved to your hard drive and stick around for a while to remember things like your login info or language preferences for your next visit.
But this is where the story takes a really interesting turn, because that simple little memory aid, it has a secret identity. It's not just a name tag, it's actually a credential in disguise. And that changes everything.
And here's exactly why that matters. Once you're logged in, that little session cookie becomes the stand-in for your password and even for your multi-factor authentication. I mean, this quote makes it chillingly clear. If an attacker gets their hands on that valid session ID, they can waltz right past all of your security. Yep, even MFA. They don't need your password. They're just in.
The absolute best way to think about this is like a temporary backstage pass at a concert. Seriously, logging in with your password and MFA is like getting through the main security gate. But once you're in, they hand you that backstage pass. Now you can go anywhere you want without anyone checking your ID again. And here's the scary part. Security doesn't care who's holding the pass. If an attacker steals it, they're the one who gets to go backstage.
So, if this pass is so powerful, you have to be wondering, how do attackers get their hands on it? Let's take a look at some of the most common ways these digital backstage passes get stolen.
The classic heist is actually surprisingly simple. Picture it. You're at a coffee shop using their free public Wi-Fi. An attacker on that same network can use some pretty basic tools to just sniff the airwaves and listen to all the traffic. If your session cookie isn't encrypted, they can literally just pluck it out of the air, pop it into their own browser, and just like that, they're logged in as you.
But it's not just about unsecured Wi-Fi. Attackers can inject malicious code into a vulnerable website, that's called cross-site scripting, which then forces your browser to give up its cookies. Or they can trick you into logging in with a session ID that they already know, which is an attack called session fixation. And more, the threat is malware called info stealers that infects your computer and just steals the cookie files directly.
Okay, so with all these threats out there, how do we protect these supercritical backstage passes? Well, the answer is to build a digital fortress. And that job starts with the developers who build the websites. And there's no single magic fix here. It's not that simple. Just like a real fortress, strong session security needs multiple layers of defense, all working together to protect that valuable cookie from every possible angle.
One of the first layers of defense is to attach specific instructions, or flags, to the cookie itself. For instance, the secure flag tells the browser, only send me over an encrypted connection. That shuts down that Wi-Fi sniffing attack cold. The HttpOnly flag prevents scripts from being able to read the cookie, which is a great defense against cross-site scripting. And the SameSite flag puts strict rules on when a cookie can be sent along with requests from other websites.
The defenses don't just stop in the browser, though. They're also on the server. Servers have to generate really long, truly random session IDs that are impossible to guess. They also need to give you a brand new session ID the second you log in, which totally defeats those session fixation attacks.
And finally, sessions should automatically time out after you've been inactive for a while. This really limits the window an attacker has to use a stolen cookie.
So, does this stuff really happen out there in the real world? Oh, absolutely. Let's look at a few major security breaches that serve as some pretty powerful cautionary tales.
This timeline really shows how the threat has evolved. Early on in 2007, you had the TJX breach where attackers were just sniffing unsecure Wi-Fi. Then in 2010, a simple tool called Firesheep made session hijacking so easy for anyone to do that it basically forced the entire web to finally adopt universal encryption. Fast forward to 2022, and in the Okta breach, you see hackers specifically stealing session cookies to bypass MFA. And now, the biggest threat is info-stealer malware stealing cookies directly from millions of devices.
And the stakes here are just incredibly high. That early TJX breach, just from sniffing unencrypted data, cost the company over $250 million. And that was just in settlements. This is not a theoretical risk. We're talking about massive financial liability.
The lesson from all this history is pretty clear. The battlefield has shifted. A decade ago, the biggest risk was using the public Wi-Fi at the coffee shop. Today, the biggest risk is malware sitting on your personal computer.
So, we want to leave you with this one final thought. That tiny, invisible file is your temporary key to the entire internet. It's your backstage pass. It's what proves that you are you. The question is, in a world of constantly evolving threats, do you really know who's watching that key?